I am an alcoholic.
I am an alcoholic.
I am an alcoholic.
I am an alcoholic.
I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, I'm Ricky, and I am an alcoholic.
I am an alcoholic.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am your alcoholic host. I am Raymond, and today I am joined with...
My name's Joe, and I'm an alcoholic.
Joe. Are you sure about that?
I've been convinced.
You've been convinced that you're an alcoholic? Or you're convinced
Yes.
your name's Joe?
Yes. I've been convinced through my own actions that I cannot handle drinking or drink in any way that's responsible. Took a long time to get to that conclusion, but we're here now, so.
A long time. You look like you're 12, so that's kind of hard to believe, but I can feel the grips of it feeling like a long time.
Yeah, I'm 21. I've looked 16 for 5 years, but my drinking started early, and just from the moment I started drinking, I drank in a way that was irresponsible and had consequences.
So you're saying you're a vampire?
Possibly.
You get older, but you don't age.
Yeah, Peter Pan.
Peter Pan. That get into a great territory right there. 21 years old, and wow, that's man, if I'd have stopped drinking when I was 21, I try not to ever think about, like, changing the past or anything, but it's just like, which direction would it be? Because like right now, it's like I'm good with everything in my life that's going on right now. So it's like I always think to like the butterfly effect. If you go back in time, would you change anything? And I have it pretty good now, but just thinking is like how much money I'd have saved from 21 until how old I am now. How much money I would have saved? I would have probably blew it on something else. So
Yeah, I mean, even at I quit drinking at 20, and I still I had those thoughts of like, oh man, I wasted so many years. Even if it was just short 5 years, or even if I just only spent 5 years worth of money, I still had that feeling of like, God, I should have quit this sooner. So I feel like everyone who gets to this point kind of has that experience, regardless of how long they're drinking or to what extent, or.
So how old were you when you started drinking?
I had my first drink when I was 17, and I went over to a friend's house. We had the day off of school. It was crazy cold weather. Some people might remember it. There was this like wicked cold snap in the Midwest. I'm from Wisconsin. And there were like minus 40 wind chills, like historic cold. And with my, auspicious teenage judgment, I decided to go over to a friend's house and get drunk for the first time. And we were just drinking Fireball straight from the bottle. And I got super woozy and had to lay down and like put a cold press on my head. And I just remember like feeling like, whoa, this is what it's like. I mean, I had tried other drugs before. Weed was for sure my first love. and I started that at like 15. But yeah, so I started drinking at 17. Drinking drove the first time I ever got drunk, and pretty much from that point on, whenever I drank to get drunk. I drank to get as drunk as possible, and I would black out, I would get sick, and yeah, I just always had that sort of ability to get carried away and that lack of control.
So we're talking 17 years old. It was to the lips and into the darkness. Then were you blackout drinking at this time then, or?
Yeah, so I drank a couple times, is all in my high school years. And then I moved to college, and the drinking culture gets much heavier. And yeah, I mean, from that point, it was kind of just blackout drinking and really depressed drinking. Like my second night at college, I blacked out at like 7 o'clock and threw up and just got so sick. And it was really easy. You're surrounded by people who are doing similar things, and you can do it under the guise of, oh, this is just what you do at this point in your life, like this is just party culture. But I'd say probably about halfway through my first semester of college, I kind of, it was pretty obvious that was horseshit. And I wasn't going out drinking. I wasn't living the typical college life of partying in bars or anything like that. I was just drinking alone and drinking very heavily. And yeah, just drinking to blackout, drinking to forget, and managing depression, loneliness, and social anxiety through alcohol.
So you're using it as like not even like a social lubricant. You were, I don't even know how to phrase this. You're drinking by yourself at this age already, so kind of like a hermit.
Yeah.
And you said this was like an escape from like depression and.
Yeah. I mean, when I moved off to college and started living on my own, there were some, I think latent issues that kind of emerged, and whether it was just the stress of new responsibility, I don't know what it was, but yeah, there was a certain loneliness and a certain depression, and especially I had pretty bad social anxiety at the time, and yeah, I mean, I didn't know how to handle those types of things. I didn't want to confront those things, and drinking was just an easy way to deal with it. And I enjoyed it to some extent. I mean, I would get those first few drinks in and I'd feel good, but it would quickly turn on me.
So was it affecting your schooling at the time, or was it not?
Not at that point. Later on, in my collegiate career, it became a bit of a problem. But I wasn't drinking every day. I was like maybe 3 or 4 times a week drinker at that point. And it was hard to get your hands on. I mean, I was only 18, so I couldn't just go and directly buy it. And I had made, I mean, at that point I had some ability to kind of regulate it, or at least regulate when I drank. I mean, once I started, it kind of all went downhill. But yeah, I mean, at that point I was definitely keeping it together for the most part.
So this was when you were 18. It's a very, 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 very start of college.
Yeah.
When did it start going out of control there? When did you start realizing this, or that you couldn't recall?
So around my 19th birthday, a little after, I was, my drinking was increasing, and I was, I kind of, hit a low and mentally, and I'd gotten into a fight with my roommate, a physical altercation. He sucker punched me. I was drunk. I was arguing with him and just, being an asshole. And, it was at that moment where it was like, this is, maybe a bit of a problem for me. It didn't make me want to stop, but it made me kind of, think twice about some of these things and say, maybe I need to do a little more to get a grip on this. So I managed to stop drinking for a little bit, probably about 3 weeks or so. And shortly after that, however, is when the coronavirus shit started to kind of break out. And it was really sudden and abrupt. And all the college students in Wisconsin got sent home. So I got sent home to do the remainder of my semester online. And at first it seemed like it was just going to be this really short thing, 2 weeks we'll be back. And then it turns into 4 weeks, 6 weeks. And after a while, it became obvious that we weren't going to be going back for a while, and I was going to be stuck at home for the foreseeable future. And, upon that realization, I was kind of like, okay, I gotta kind of change up what I'm doing here. And I was just at home. I was bored. I didn't have a lot to do. So I started smoking a lot of pot. I was smoking like every day. And then from that, I started drinking again. And it was right back into those same habits of just like blacking out drunk and, just binge drinking as much as possible. So it kind of just picked up again after that. And that went on for quite some time.
So, what made you want to stop then?
Well, we can get into that. I mean, there's quite a bit of time between that moment in time and when I finally decided to stop drinking. So I'll give a little bit of context. I was living at home for 18 months. And like I said, just like I was smoking weed day, morning, and night. And during the nights, I would usually drink and smoke. And throughout that time, there were a number of, different things that went down, different fights, different situations caused by my drinking. I had some mental breakdowns in front of my parents, and I would just like, there was on Christmas Day of that same year, I just like blacked out at a cousin's house, and I started calling my cousin a bitch, and then I went home and had this huge fight with my parents. I can't remember. So there was all of this sort of shit going down, and as I was stuck at home, I just was becoming increasingly depressed and increasingly lonely. And it just seemed like things were kind of falling apart for me at that point. Like I was quite young. I was only, like 19, 20 during that time. And, due to the fact that I was stuck at home, all of my friendships had kind of faded away throughout that time, just didn't keep in touch with people. And I just had all this time to myself. And the only way I really knew how to spend it was through drinking or smoking. That's where all my pleasure and happiness came from. So yeah, I'm stuck at home for 18 months.
Well,
That comes
let me
to,
jump in here. You said your pleasure
yeah,
and happiness. I mean, was it truly pleasure and happiness, or was this alcohol and drugs making your mind think you were happy?
right. No, that's exactly what it was. I mean, I say that speaking from my perspective, my feelings about the situation at the time. I mean, in retrospect, it's obvious to me that that was only inflaming the problems, but at the time, that's not the way I felt about it. That's not my interpretation, or that wasn't my interpretation of the situation. So, but yes, you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, it just something clicked when you said that because I think about. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this. It makes me happy, but then like I always think about the outcome after the fact, and it was like it just made me feel worse the next day. So it's like, okay, I'm finding happiness in a bottle or whatever, and but no, you just felt miserable and self shame and regret the next day, and you're just like, so
No, that's exactly what it was. I mean, yeah, I would wake up feeling like shit the next day, and I would just say to myself, oh, it's just because I haven't drank anything today. So if I just do that, then it'll all be good. You know, not evaluating why it is that I always feel like shit after I do that. But yeah.
yeah,
Anyways, um, so yeah, I anyways, I get to the end of that time I'm spending at home, and I'm finally gonna go back to college. This is in the summer of 2021, and I'm feeling good about it. I've transferred schools. I'm gonna go live with my sister, who is a grad student down in Illinois. So I finally get this sense of like, all right, I'm gonna like take my life back, and I'm gonna get back on track, and I'm gonna feel normal again. And so I moved down there, and none of that really happens. Um, you know, all those sort of problems I hadn't really addressed them, and the drinking, you know, that just kind of came with the change of location. That was a routine and a habit and a way of life that was just so baked into what I did that those problems just followed me. And uh, so I get down there, and I'm as lonely and as depressed as ever. Uh, I can't make friends. I'm super antisocial, and all I'm doing now is just drinking and smoking alone again. Um, and that was really tough, and that really started to wear on me because I had built up this expectation of like everything's going to be great, and then all of a sudden it seemed worse, and I started to get really depressed and really suicidal. I was just I was drinking day and night. I was going to classes drunk. I was I was failing to carry out my obligations. I wouldn't turn things in. I was, you know, really letting the priorities in my life slip away, just spending it drinking. And I was, you know, pretty close to death. I mean, I just gotten to a point where I just really didn't value my own life in any way. And I just didn't really have a problem with the idea of like drinking myself to sleep and not waking up. And you know, I was going down that path, and there was just nothing stopping me. Nothing, nobody could intervene. I was just kind of dead set on this really really morbid and depressing view of my life. Um, but anyway, so I'll get to why I stopped drinking.
oh, I just want to point out that's a pretty fast progression, and from like you went and that was like 0 to 100 in like a blink of an eye, pretty much.
Yeah,
And So and the reason I just wanted to point that out is because we always, you know, the more I do this, you know, you hear of progressive and you hear of, you just hear all the different things, the way alcoholism's explained. You know, it's a progressive disease, or it's hereditary, or it's from traumas and stuff like that. But like, mine was a long progression. Yours was like
Rapid. Yeah.
very, very rapid. And it's just like, I don't know. It's just one of those things that's got me sitting here like thinking again. And that's why I like doing this. It's just like, we all suffer. Well, not all. I mean, like alcoholics, we suffer from this, but there's just different little attributes that just, you know, makes it different. For you know, we have our little uniqueness. I mean, we're the same, but there is uniqueness, and because I know a lot of us think we're unique from every other alcoholic, but we're really the same. But we do have our uniqueness. It's just, I'm thinking back to another conversation I had, and it's like, well, here's the uniqueness, but it's still not a reason to drink or whatever, because, you know, apparently you've figured, you know, you got to that point, and we'll get to that other point in the story. I just wanted to bring that up.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that's, I mean, that was scary. I mean, that was something I could have never foreseen. I mean, in 3 months' time, you know, I went from somebody who was relatively happy and hopeful about myself and about my life, and within 3 months' time, I was just like at the absolute fucking bottom, and just drinking nonstop, and had no hope or cares in the world. I mean, yeah, it's alarming.
Yeah, I do want us to circle back to that after we get a little farther into this. I do want to circle back to that.
Yeah.
You'll see what I mean here in a minute, but let's get back to you.
Yeah. So anyways, last November of 2021, it was a Saturday, typical Saturday. I started drinking around 10 a.m. There was a football game on at 11, so I justified it to myself, like I got to get tipsy for this game. So 10 o'clock in the morning, drinking all through the day. I can't remember what I drank or how much I drank, but it was a lot. It was an awful lot. So around midnight of that night, I decided to go out and buy a pack of cigarettes. I was really drunk, but I'd been making a habit of driving drunk, and I thought I was good at it, you know, like every drunk driver does. So I go out and I'm on the search for some smokes. I was only 20 at the time, but there were some places around who wouldn't ID you. But anyways, I'm out driving, and I think I'm doing fine. I see a cop's lights come on behind me, and you know, you just get that feeling like, oh shit. And yeah, that was a really bad position to be in. And you know, up to that point, I had been contemplating suicide for quite some time, pretty intensely. You know, probably 5-6 weeks. You know, in a really intensely. And I decided in that moment, fuck it, I'm gonna end it right here. We're just gonna you know, we're going to end this thing right here, right now. I'm not getting arrested. I'm not, you know, getting my mugshot taken. I'm not doing that fucking sobriety test. So I sped up the car to about 60, 70, something like that. I can't remember. blacked out pretty badly, and just crashed into a light pole. And my head hit the steering wheel, the windshield broke, I got shards of glass in my face. I was obviously knocked out by the impact, but however long later, I'm not too sure how long, I remember waking up and I was just crushed in this car, just smushed between the seat and the steering wheel. And a paramedic was talking to me a little bit. I don't remember much of the conversation, but just, have you been drinking? Yes. Can you feel your toes? Yes. And, that's about all I can remember. I fell asleep and they had to cut me out. Then they took me to the hospital. And, that was just, a shitty, traumatic experience and the defining experience of my life up to this point.
Then you quit drinking. You haven't had a drink since, and that's the end of the story. Happily ever after, right?
That's right.
Right,
we can end it here.
As everyone, Joe W, put your hands together. That was his path. No, I know that's not the end of the story, but man, that's intense, man. Well, so you got a little cherries and berries, and you're just like, fuck it. I mean, you were already hitting the fuck it button, but you were hitting the ultimate fuck it button at the time.
Yeah.
And what was your first thought when like you woke up and you're like talking to these paramedics?
Well, I was just, I was surprised to even be awake. And I remember, I was dazed and they asked me if I drank, and I said, I just remember being like, oh, whatever, I'll just say yes, like it doesn't matter. And then, like I said, they asked me, can you feel your legs? Can you feel your toes? And I moved them around, and I remember being thankful. I was like, oh shit, I can actually, I'm not paralyzed. This is good. And after that, like I said, that's really all I can remember from inside the car. But I kind of remember being in the ambulance, and they were asking me all sorts of questions, and I told them what happened, and I was completely honest. I said I was like, I was trying to kill myself.
So were you thankful you weren't paralyzed, or thankful you were alive?
Both. I mean, there was, in that moment, I was happy that I didn't succeed. The following days and weeks, that was a little bit of a different story. I got to the hospital and whatnot, and everything was good. I was in surprisingly good shape. I broke my ankle, but other than that, I didn't have any internal bleeding or anything. But I remember in those days following, the people would be coming in and out. You'd have nurses and doctors, and they'd be talking to you and saying like, "Oh, you must be so happy you're alive." And I was, I would just say, "Yeah, oh, absolutely," But I wasn't. I really wasn't. I had been contemplating suicide for weeks up to that point. And then now all of a sudden I went and I did that, and I hurt myself, and there's all this legal, there's all this legal consequences in the foreseeable future. And I totally fucked up my family, and it just made me feel even shittier about myself, So in those days and weeks following, I didn't feel good. I really didn't have that same, appreciation for my own life that I had in the visceral moments afterwards.
So what's the difference from back then and now?
At that moment I had, I I realized that what I was doing wasn't going to work, the drinking and using drugs. And I, you know, I just said, I got to a point where I was like, all right, I'm alive and I got to make this work somehow. And it's not going to work if alcohol is in the equation. So shortly after that, I mean, in the immediate days after I didn't drink, 'cause I was in a hospital on psychiatric hold or whatnot. But I get out and I talk to my parents and a lawyer and everything, and they, AA comes up as a topic. So reluctantly, I'm like, all right, I don't know what to think about this, but I'm gonna do it. I gotta try it. I gotta try something. And I went into those meetings. The first couple meetings, I would just pop in, kind of watch and see what it was all about. But I was uncomfortable and I hated it, and I didn't like the fact that I had to be in it. It just didn't sit right with me. I was just frustrated that I had, let my life get to this point where this was kind of, where this is what it had come to. But yeah, I don't know. I guess there was something inside me that wanted to keep going and wanted to, give my life another shot. And yeah, I got involved with the program, and yeah. I don't know. Do you want me to keep talking about the program?
Well, I mean, so apparently
Sorry,
you went no, you're fine. You went to AA, but you're saying reluctantly, and it sounds like you're having some. You're like, I'm just gonna go because someone brought it up, right?
Yeah, and it was tough those first times. Like I said, and there was a lot of self-pitying, but I'd realized that this was something I needed to do and needed to try. So I remember I went to a meeting, and this wasn't my first meeting. This was probably, I can't remember how many, but I decided to stay afterwards and try and meet some people and get more involved and be a little more formal in the process. And I met my sponsor there, and I just remember after that kind of that interaction of putting in the effort, I had a kind of a good feeling about it. I kind of had this warm feeling, and I hadn't felt that in quite some time. So I was, it was promising to me. It was like, this is something that I can do. So from that point forward, I started going to meetings and trying to share and trying to take it more seriously. And it was rough. It wasn't easy at first. It wasn't smooth sailing.
Please help us. Help others that are in need of help. Subscribe, rate, and review our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any other platform you can. We were talking about the program, and you stuck around, and after a meeting, and you met your sponsor. I was just curious. I mean, for someone being reluctant, why did you think you needed a sponsor, and why did that start to change things for you?
Well, I'd been kind of just hanging around a couple of AA meetings. I wasn't going regularly or whatnot, but I kind of realized this was something I was gonna need to do and need to take seriously. I mean, I had to do something. I had to change something. I had to change the trajectory I was going on. And I thought, if I'm going to just float around in here every once in a while, it's probably not going to do much for me. I got to try and, actually put an effort in and see what this has to offer. Because right now I'm not doing much of anything other than just showing up to meetings and sitting quietly. So I get a sponsor and starts kind of laying it out for me and giving me some things to do. And, you have to go to meetings every day and whatnot. And at first it seemed like a burden. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be so much work. But I started doing it, and it felt good, and I was sharing and opening up and getting encouragement to share and meeting some people, talking to some really cool people. And, slowly, brick by brick, I started to, build on something and get a little momentum and start to learn things about myself through other alcoholics, relate to experiences. So I just kind of started that process of trying to make it work, and it wasn't smooth sailing the whole time, but I kept at it. There was just something that, compelled me to keep trying and keep going back.
You had to go to meetings every day?
Well, I didn't have to, but it was for the best.
Yeah. Or was it suggested you go to meetings every day?
I mean, obviously it's suggested. I mean, I don't have to do anything, but
No. I mean, you make it sound like you have to do this, but it's
no. But I mean, yeah, it was
in the long
suggested.
in the long run. I'm just saying, you talk to a sponsor and you take suggestion and you're open minded and willing to do the work. I mean, it's not really you have to do it. You're willing to do it. Is what I was getting at, and it's not like no one forced you to do this. You did this on your own free will.
No, absolutely.
Right. So, I mean, was this your first sponsor, or did you sponsor shop prior, or?
No, this was my first sponsor. I met him after a meeting, and he offered me his number, and kind of, he said to me, I've messed up some cars too from drinking and driving. I can relate. And I took down as many numbers as I could that night, and I started reaching out, and I talked to him on the phone, and he said, if you're looking for a sponsor, I'd be willing to sponsor you. And I just took him on.
Yeah.
Seemed like a good guy with good intentions, and it was a good place to start.
So you're talking about doing the work and a lot of work. I mean, at what point did you decide it was that you needed to do step work? And
yeah,
at what there at what turning point, and that you realize that if I just show up and not do anything, this isn't going to change anything. You kind of see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, even when I got a sponsor, I was still resisting the step work. I didn't want to work it. I mean, it was suggested that I go to meetings every day, so I was doing that, and I was trying to open up and share, but I don't know what it was. I just didn't feel like I wanted to work the steps, or if I needed to. But I remember, I don't know how far in I was at this point, maybe like 3 months. And I went to a meeting, and I got introduced to the term dry drunks. And if you've never heard the term, it's basically just an alcohol. It's an alcoholic who doesn't drink but doesn't do any of the steps or anything like that. And it was kind of eye opening to me, because I was like, oh man, hearing people talk about this, they're just kind of describing me at that point. Like, yeah, I wasn't drinking, but I was just kind of being a crab and I wasn't putting in the effort. So after that meeting, I day after, I had a conversation with my sponsor, and I said, let's try these steps. Let's give it a shot.
I mean, apparently the steps didn't kill you.
No, they did not.
Did you do traditional steps, or did you use a different type of steps, or?
Yeah, I did a shortened 6-step version, non-secular 6 steps.
You mean secular?
Or secular, my bad.
Non-secular would be traditional. That'd be the 12 steps.
Sorry.
6 steps, that reminds me of Reason and Recovery.
Yes, it was Reason and Recovery, 6 steps.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much just, just doing the work and, taking, admitting your own faults and fixing that shit. So you wrapped up the steps, and how did that feel?
I'm sorry, did you say when I finished the steps?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it took me quite a while. I guess there's no right way to do it, but I wish I'd done it sooner. Once I finally got to that point, I really felt like I'd learned some new things about myself, and just creating that moral inventory. It was very illuminating. Kind of writing down and coming to terms with a lot of the shitty things you did, because after once I sat down and kind of thought about all the people I've wronged, all the people I've wronged, and all the things I've done wrong, it was quite a big list, and felt really good to get to that point. It felt like I'd accomplished something, and felt like I'd actually made an effort to try and make things better, and to make amends, and actually try and improve myself and move forward.
So how much time do you have now?
I have 1 year and 1 month as of today.
13 months.
Yes.
Oh, wow. It sure is. Congratulations. Yeah, I know a lot of people say after that first year, it's you're like, I don't get that attaboy on the ass, but you know what? Congratulations, man. 14 months. That's 13 months. See, now you got me mincing stuff up. That's tremendous, man. So, I mean, what are you doing now to maintain sobriety after working the steps?
Yeah. So, I still have meetings that I frequent. I don't go to them as much as I don't do them every day anymore, but I still try and catch them when I can work them into my schedule. I also have a pretty good group of guys who I meet with a couple times a week, who I can share any concerns with, and get set straight if that needs to be the case. But other than that, I've just tried to focus a lot more on my own mental welfare, and doing things like individual counseling and journaling and reflection, and just trying to catch myself if I fall into old thinking patterns, and always trying to, improve and do a little better than the day before. Yeah.
And your overall relationship with your family now?
Yeah. I mean, my relationships have gotten a lot better. I mean, when during my heaviest drinking and use, I really had no concern for a lot of my relationships, and my family's needs were only as important as, or they were only important to me until they interfered with my ability to get fucked up. Um, I was tremendously selfish, and I was, pretty inconsiderate and rude to them at times. I came home for the holiday Thanksgiving, and my mom said to me that she was, actually happy to be around me because I'm pleasant to be around now. I used to be unpleasant to be around, and that fucking stung. That was some brutal honesty, but it's so gratifying now to have gotten to a point where that's no longer the case, and where I actually like have a relationship that's on good standing, and I can just be happy with that and be content with that.
So what would you, if you had to attribute the biggest thing of, working a program and become, I don't know how to word it, just remaining abstinent from drugs and alcohol, what be your would be your go-to for that? Your
I
secret
really
sauce.
think I really think there's huge benefits in community alone. That's what's so great about AA is that you have a community of like-minded people with the same goal of being abstinent. And I think it's just so crucial to have contacts and have people in the program who you can trust, and just always be willing to put yourself out there and go to meetings. Like I said, the first probably like 8 months of my sobriety were fucking brutal, and there were still so many days where I just felt like shit, and I just I was so down. But even on those bad days, get yourself to a meeting, talk to someone, listen to someone. You just never know when someone's going to say the right thing or when you're going to meet the right person. Something's going to click. You just got to fucking stay in that program and be willing to put yourself out there and do what it takes not to drink. If that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It sums it up. And the reason I'm just kind of like, going back and forth with the punches here with the questions is, it's, people think of AA, they think of like all these old people sitting in a church basement somewhere, and that's not the case, or that you have to have a higher power or some type of religion, or it has to be a set standard and something like that. But, you came in not wanting to do it originally, and especially being the age you are, it's just like, that's, but I'm not trying to be like a stereotype or anything, but you think of like 21-year-olds today, that's all they think. I feel like all they think about is partying and doing dumb shit, because that's what I did, and I mean that's like huge. It's a huge thing. You dealt with your own demons and took it upon yourself and was open-minded about it, and put up with someone telling you suggestions to how to basically survive this, because it's ongoing for one, and it is work. But I remember doing my steps, and every time I accomplished something, it felt like an accomplishment, or I felt a little bit better. And like 8, 9, 10, that around those months, I was still having funky feelings too. And I mean, we're not perfect, and all we can do is just work on ourselves as we go. And I really like your input, man.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming on here and taking the time to do this too.
Not a problem.
You got any advice for the? I guess you'd be a millennial then. Is that the one I'm looking for?
I'm even younger.
You're younger than a millennial. Smegma. Gen Z. I don't know. I don't pay attention to any of that shit really. But you got any advice? I mean, that's a tough age to contend with preconceived notions of how we stereotype stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the one thing I'd say, I mean, I know a lot of people who've gone through similar things or my age. This was it was a tough time to get into this routine of drinking, because it's like I'm still maturing and coming to age and finding things out about myself. And I think a lot of people my age struggle with coming of age and feeling like they have a place and feeling like they have worth. It's shitty advice, but I mean it with all my heart. Just say, just keep going, just keep searching. I got to the absolute bottom. I got to the brink of death. I got to a point where I didn't care anymore, but I kept going. There was something that made me just want to keep searching, keep trying to find some purpose or some meaning. And after years of that, just feeling like total shit and feeling lost and feeling hopeless and with no place, I finally got to a point where I feel happy and I feel content and I feel like I want to be alive and I feel like I have purpose. So yeah, if you're feeling that way, keep fucking at it. Talk to someone. Don't be afraid to get help. There's no shame in that. Everything's going to be all right. Just keep working.
I like that you said talk to someone. I always find that's the biggest thing with this. So, all right, man. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you for being a service to me and being a part of my recovery, Joe.
You as well. Thanks.
Want to celebrate a milestone in your sobriety? Have a burning desire? Just want to say hi. Call our hotline at 937-203-8330.